get to the fathers of the church. You already set us up who they are. Which father of the church would you like to, explain his insights on the faith?
Yeah, St. Ignatius of Antioch. And he's from Antioch, which is in modern-day Syria, I believe. It may have been. I'd have to double-check. Maybe it's Turkey. But he was ordained by St. Peter.
Wow.
He was a successor of Peter and in the bishopric of Antioch. So he knew the apostles.
Right.
All the ancient traditions about him say he knew the apostles. He was martyred in the Colosseum in about AD 107. His letters to the Roman Church specifically asked them to not prevent him from being martyred. He talks about being eaten by beasts and how he desires this because he wants to be worthy of Christ and be sifted like Christ. And so I call him St. Ignatius the Red Pill. He's my patron saint. And for those who don't know, Red Pill is a reference to the movie The Matrix.
Yes.
Where the main character is basically given two options. He can take the red pill, which will show, well, I'll start with the blue pill. He can choose the blue pill, which will allow him to remain in a pleasant but fantastical sense of unreality. So he can keep going on living life like he has. It's not true. It's all lies, but it's more comfortable. Or he can choose the red pill, which will lead to a disturbing reality because he'll know the truth, but it'll be the truth. And so he won't be as comfortable, but he will know the truth and it will set him free. And so that's why I call him Ignatius the Red Pill, because he was the first father I read. Again, I opened this up just to research when I was at the Museum of the Bible, and I was expecting Christians just like me. And Ignatius very powerfully disabused me of that notion. He was the first to use the term Catholic Church.
Yes. 107.
And basically what I was confronted with Ignatius was astoundingly Catholic beliefs about the priesthood, about the Eucharist, about the center of Christian worship being an altar, about the authority of bishops, about just the structure of government in the church. And it was essentially, many of these things that I had been told most of my life were medieval inventions and barnacles that had gathered on the ship of the church or whatnot that the Protestants claimed they had to scrape off. Here they are with a man who knew the apostles. And so, that's very, very jarring. And I know he's done a similar thing with many ex-Protestants as well. It's existentially shocking because, again, if you're a Protestant, the whole basis of our religion, our version of Christianity, was we were going back to the pure fountain right at the beginning. But what I was discovering was that fountain had gotten very tainted and very poisoned, if Protestantism was true, right at the source. But it's like, this guy knew the apostles. He was ordained by the apostles. What right do I have to contradict him?
I'm just chuckling because I have known so many Protestants who have found the same exact thing you just found, and they become Catholic. And I thought of St. Henry Newman, who's, I guess, November 1st will be a doctor. John Henry Newman. Yeah, John Henry Newman will be a doctor of the church. And he said something to the effect that, when you study history, you cease to be Protestant. So when you go back to the early church, it really is shocking for our friends who, many of them were ministers who were, Baptist ministers like Ken Hensley and others. And they all come up with the same conclusion that they were duped because they didn't get this information until they were adults. And it shocks them because of the clarity of the fathers and how consistent that is with what we believe, centuries later.
Millennia later.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned St. John Henry Newman because just this morning I got a text from an American friend of mine. He's on our advisory board. He's visiting another friend of ours in the UK right now. And they were just visiting St. John Henry Newman's collection of books. And so they were saying, here's his own set of books. And so he sent me that picture this morning. And I apologize to the audience. I'm a little stuffy. I had a lot of allergy stuff, have a lot of allergy stuff going on. So if I sneeze or whatever, if I have to step away for a second, that's what it'll be. So probably the most impactful letter of St. Ignatius was his letter to the Smyrnians, the city of Smyrna, which is in modern day Turkey. It's the first one where he mentions, the Catholic Church, and it's the first time that explicit term shows up in the documents we have. But it's very interesting. In all of his letters, he assumes the same model of church government, which is a bishop, priests, and deacons. Yeah. He's referring to that everywhere, and he makes he offers many powerful lines in many letters, but specifically in the letter to the Smyrnians, it was his mention of the Catholic Church, which was interesting. But the key thing was, I think it's in like section 7 or something, he refers to the Eucharist in astoundingly real and substantive terms. So I'll say what he says. I don't have it in front of me, but he essentially says, he's referring to heretics. In many of his letters, he's telling the different churches to avoid heresy, that it will send you to hell and whatnot. And specifically in the letter to the Smyrnians, he says that the heretics deny that the Eucharist is the same body and blood of Jesus Christ that died and rose again, that suffered, died, and rose again. So he's making a one-to-one comparison.
Yeah.
He's not talking about a Eucharist that's a symbol. He's not talking about a Eucharist that is merely a spiritual presence of Christ, because indeed the heretics he was going against, probably the Docetists, they believed it was kind of like an early proto-Islamic belief that Jesus's body was just a spirit, and he didn't really die on the cross. And so it wasn't just a spiritual presence, because that would have been more in line with the Docetist heresy, that if the Eucharist is a sort of one-to-one between Christ when he was on earth and Christ on the altar, then if he was a spirit, then it would just be spiritual. But St. Ignatius very clearly rejects that, not only here, but in many other letters. And it's also not, more the Lutheran view, where, the Lutheran view is that that Christ is truly and substantially present in the Eucharist, but alongside bread and wine.
That's right.
And so it's closer to the Catholic view, but St. Ignatius doesn't say that. He does a one-to-one. He says the Eucharist is the same body that suffered, died, and rose again. And so that only lines up with the Catholic Church. You could say Eastern Orthodoxy as well, but that only lines up with the apostolic churches, the churches that have actual apostolic succession to this day. And there was nothing Protestant about it. And yet this was one of the things that I was taught was one of the chief things that we rejected about the Catholic Church. And indeed, it was idolatrous, which if the Protestants are right, that's correct, because if the Eucharist isn't our Lord, body, blood, soul, and divinity, then we are wrong to worship it. That would be idolatry. We'd just be worshiping bread or wine. But and then St. Ignatius also had a very disturbing line.
What was that?
He said in this same section, he said that those who deny this gift of God perish in the midst of their disputes.
Wow, that is tough.
And it was something to that effect. And it was, I read that and I was like, and this was my very first father. And so I'm seeing him affirm something that none of my Protestant brethren of any denomination could affirm, only the Catholic Church that we had rejected. And he was saying that our denial of this gift would lead to death in the midst of our disputes about it.
Yeah.
So it was just an astoundingly relevant. I call it a 1-9er. I mean, perhaps people have heard me use that term. It's Ecclesiastes 1:9.
Yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
And it was astoundingly like that, and very, very disturbing.
Joshua, as you were reading this for your first time, as a non-Catholic, didn't you go to your people who you respect and go, wait a minute, how do we make sense out of this, to maybe a pastor or somebody who you respect? Did you try to at least get an answer from your Protestant brothers and sisters on answering the fathers of the church? Yeah,
and indeed, one of the things I did is I didn't know James White personally, but I knew about him. Sure. Oh, you know him personally?
I do.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah.
I'm an old man. Remember, I met all these guys 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, for those who maybe don't know, James White is a well-known anti-Catholic
big time
apologist. He's a Reformed Baptist. They follow the 1689 London Baptist Confession. And, he's right on a number of things, cultural issues, abortion, marriage, whatever.
Right.
But he does all these debates with Catholics. And so I had never really watched those before, but I decided when I was running into all this stuff, if anybody can save me from becoming Catholic, because I really didn't want to become Catholic for many reasons. This took place over months, but it was James White.
Yeah, that's right. You went
and so, among other things, I read other Protestant books on the subject.
Wow.
But among other things, I watched all of his debates with Catholics, at least all the ones that I was aware of, which is hours and hours and hours. Each debate was minimum 3 hours.
Yes.
Some of them were 5 and 6 hours. So I watched all of them. And it was just very clear that James wasn't providing good answers. I'll just put it that way. At the end of the day, St. Ignatius of Antioch, just to focus on him, for example, it was just too clear, too on the nose, too in the face, and there was no way to get around.
If you like the message of Virgin Most Powerful Radio, type in under comments, Jesus is King.